Hi there, my name's Laura and I'm the back half of Stellar Tandem, a record-breaking attempt to cycle around the world in 2022 on tandem bicycle. And in the run-up to this trip, we've been speaking to people from the worlds of cycling and endurance, and I'm delighted to say to be speaking to Christina Mackenzie, who I had a fantastic time dot watching earlier this year as she broke the Lee jog, so the Land's End John O'Groats record, in a staggering time of 51 hours, 5 minutes and 27 seconds, covering the approximately 840-mile route. So a completely staggering achievement. So first of all, Christina, I want to say a massive congratulations on that feat.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for having the invite to come and speak with you.
No, it's great to hear from you. And I suppose, first of all, I wanted to kind of start at the very beginning, because I'm always quite interested to know, have you always been like mega sporty? Have you always been like really competitive, or kind of is this kind of come about later in life or a bit more gradually?
Yeah, a bit of both, really. Growing up, I was always sporty and always probably kind of like your tomboy, running outside and playing on bikes and that kind of childhood, but didn't really sort of take it up, probably because coming from the Outer Hebrides, we probably had limited opportunities when I was growing up. And the fact that, you know, we were in the local swim club, so we didn't have much competition and, you know, to get away traveling and things like that. So we were kind of restricted. So it's probably more for the fun element, which was really good. But then I did a bit of cross country and running 5Ks at that point. But I probably never really picked it up until 2012. Just under 10 years ago there. I thought I'm going to do my first 10K just to raise money for Macmillan cancer. But my dad died of that when I was 18. So I thought, you know, that would be just a nice kind of charity event, raise some money at the same time, get fit, kind of motivation. So it really just kind of stemmed from there, and it just grew arms and legs. So the 10K run turned into a half marathon, marathons, to then, when I wasn't running, I liked cycling and swimming, to triathlons, to starting off at sprint distance triathlon, Olympic, half Ironman, and then I went on, I've done 7 Ironman since then. But then that's when I kind of figured that I kind of have an engine as opposed to a sprinter. So being 44 years old, I'm probably never going to be, I was never a sprinter anyway. So it's just kind of really developing that engine even further now. So yeah, it was 2012 I bought my first road bike to do triathlon. And then a few years later, I bought my time trial bike and sort of found the niche for time trial and long distance cycling.
Yeah, wow, and it is definitely a bit of a bug that these things seem to escalate quite quickly. I think once you get into the ultra distance, and it's interesting what you say, because we've spoken to a few people and it comes up a few times that particularly the ultra endurance stuff, it does seem to be something that females seem to have good attributes towards, and there doesn't seem to be an age limit on it. And I certainly know, like in the ultra distance running scene as well as the cycling scene, there's some very strong kind of older women. So I'd say you might not have reached your prime yet. You never know.
Yeah, I think you just kind of settle into it and you can probably just endure it more. I think when you get to that kind of, probably with the mindset as well.
Yeah, and you were obviously quite competitive with that. How did you then kind of branch out from that? It's kind of a bit different doing kind of events to going after a world record. What was the link there?
Yeah, well, when I moved to Stirling in 2016, I joined Stirling Bike Club, and they've got a really big team, really good. There was that kind of group of people that used to go down to the 24-hour Mersey Roads, the Nationals, which everyone kind of in endurance really knows that one. So that was a real kind of good introduction to to the long distance meeting, or not even meeting. It was really kind of like seeing the likes of Mike Broadwith and Yasmin, that she was attempting Land's End to John O'Groats around about that time. Doing the 24 hours and thinking I'm never doing it again, to then going back again the following year, you know, with more of a goal, because I was just under 400 miles the first time I tried it. I thought, well, I can't leave it. It was like 397. I thought, I can't leave it like that. You know, I'm sure I can do more than 400. So I went back the following year and got 428. And then at that point, the really kind of the Land's End or the end to end, that was really kind of a focal point, probably 2017, 2018 when Mike went. And I remember actually looking at the map and looking at his Strava and going, that's just ridiculous. That, you know, you looked at it and it was just like complete amazement, and knowing that he's averaging like 30 kilometers an hour for that length of time. And then obviously see what he endured to do it. And then obviously the women's record as well, seeing Jasmine doing it, trying to attempt that. And I thought, you know, maybe it is a possibility. So rather than thinking, well, I'll go back and do another 24 and see if I can up my time, myself and one of the girls in the support team that used to come down with the 24, I think it was probably over a few drinks, over a few glasses of wine that we got chat. And then it kind of, one thing led to another. And then before we knew it, we'd agreed that I was going to do it and she was going to be a support team, and we were going to get a full support team on the basis of that. So then waking up in the morning and it's like, do you remember what you agreed to? I was like, no, what? What was that? So then it was really just put the team in place to see if the other guys, if they would be keen for it, and they were all up for it. They didn't need to take too much persuasion. So I think, you know, when you say it out loud and when you kind of like vocalize it, it's kind of put in stone. So there's no going back after that.
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of had that moment where I'd been kind of nudging Steve for a while. I'd had the thought put in my head about the tandem record by the two tandem ladies who currently hold the female record, and I've been nudging Steve a bit. And then we maybe a similar event, we had a lot of friends around for a summer party, and we all stood around, and suddenly this idea came out. And after that, it kind of feels like this, you said it out loud now, there's no going back. But yeah,
the rest is history after that, as you say.
Yeah, and it's all now spiraled out of all control. And I'll just mention, because you mentioned Michael Broadwith there, I believe his record was in 2018. He broke kind of a 19-year-old world record, and his time was 43 hours. 43 hours and 25 minutes and 13 seconds, I believe. So it's just mind blowing, isn't it?
It's incredible. It really is. Yeah.
And I think the thing about lead jog is it's quite an iconic route, and I'm actually not quite sure if this sort of thing exists in many other countries, but I can certainly remember growing up and getting into cycling as much as I didn't get into long distance until quite a lot later, that I could always had this thing about the Land's End John O'Groats route, and I thought, oh, that'd be amazing to do. And you know, how long would it take and how would you do it? And kind of looking at it on the map is pretty spectacular. And we were very lucky that we rode it much slower last year, but it's an amazing feat. But the kind of race route itself, I believe, is fairly set. Obviously, there are many ways to ride from Land's End to John O'Groats, but is that kind of almost literally the same, or did you have kind of any variations from, say, Michael's route, or what Jasmine had tried, or is it literally there are these roads and that's it?
Yeah, it is really the same route, other than, you know, one of us might have sort of taken a kind of an off-course route around an industrial estate or around a couple of roundabouts, but generally it is the same route. It's kind of like the fastest or the kind of most direct, really, because you see the people that do it from, you know, that take 5-6 days, that they kind of maybe go over different sides, that they obviously don't go up the A9 and they avoid the busy roads. So you could probably look at the downside to us is that we do go on the busy roads, you know, the A30 starting off with, which is nearly like a motorway in itself. It was really busy. And then the A9, which you don't really get many cyclists on that. In fact, I don't think you get any cyclists. In fact, if I was driving along there, I'd be wondering what a cyclist was doing there myself. But thankfully, you know, you have your support vehicles behind, and then you've got support up in front as well, so that you're giving the cars directions and that they know that you're going to be on there and you're there for a reason. But yeah, it's probably the most direct route for that. Wouldn't say it's the flattest route, but it's most direct.
Yeah, And yeah, I suppose there's been a lot of work put in over the years to try and figure out, what's going to kind of be the most efficient way to travel out the country. So did you literally have a support vehicle kind of shadowing you all the way? I know, for example, Mark Beaumont's around the world record, he used a kind of camper van or a motorhome behind him a lot of the way. And I think certainly on the busier roads, that obviously makes a massive difference.
Yeah, behind I had a support vehicle that was basically the backup vehicle that had all the maintenance parts in it, as well as all the mechanic was in that, and my brother. So they were literally driving behind me just about the whole time, obviously with the signage and the beacon as well. So if I had any mechanicals or anything, which thankfully, over that distance, I didn't have one mechanical, not one puncture, nothing, and I had a whole van full of spares and whatnot there. So they were behind me the whole time, which was really good because you felt quite protected going up like these busy roads there. But there was times, when you're climbing a hill, and when you know that there's a car behind you and you just hear it just going so slowly and you're like, just overtake me, just overtake me. But at the same time, it is really reassuring. And then I had a camper van up ahead as well. So there's two in the camper van and then another two, because bearing in mind that we've got the RRA officials and timekeepers with us as well. So they're part of that team. But that was really handy, just having the camper van up ahead, because it means that, that I didn't have to rely on facilities for changing and for, any comfort breaks. That I could just jump on the camper van, whatever I needed to do, just go in there. And then because I was getting hand ups every hour as well. So the team that was in the car, so they were basically giving me a hand up and then leapfrogging me, and then within an hour again, that was them another hand up. So they were on the go the whole time. The camper van were on the go the whole time. So if I got no sleep, I don't think that they got much sleep between themselves either.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to point out. There was barely any, certainly no sleep and barely any rest on this attempt by the look of it. It was there, but obviously that does take a huge amount of support, and the team you had behind you, as much a part of this record as you are, I'd say, because I imagine you just couldn't, there's no way you could attempt something like that without such a support team. And just give us kind of an idea, how many people were involved and what kind of roles did you have? I mean, was there any time or space for things like a physio, or how did that kind of pan out in terms of your team?
Yeah, so in general, so I've got four of my friends that live in Stirling. We're all members of Stirling Bike Club. So we're really friends, and this is where it really just kind of evolved from. So it's the fact that, we started off as friends and then this kind of grew. So we've obviously got closer, and because I basically put my trust and my confidence in them the whole time. Since, not having any sleep, knowing that they're looking out for you, that they're going to pull you in at any time if they feel, if it's unsafe. So they were really instrumental in the whole planning and the organisation of it, from organising the hotels, the transfer, because, although we were only on the road for 2 days, it was still 2 days to get down to Land's End and then a day back as well. So it was 5 days in total that we were literally on the road put together. But it was a planning that was doing beforehand, because we had tried to attempt it in 2020, but then with COVID and the restrictions, we decided not to. So then we had to book the hotels. So it's booking hotels in advance. And then when you've got a weather window, so you don't have an actual date. So you're booking hotels, with flexibility in the cancellation, so that that you have a room, but at the same time that you can cancel them. So the logistics behind that, and then just the transport all the way back up there as well, and then to getting sponsorship for it as well, because it's quite a costly event to do there, because you're paying for all that, and then you're also paying for the officials and timekeepers as well. But I think just in general, having the guys there as the support, just morale, encouragement, even the days that I'm doing my training days, or even through the winter, they'll always check in on me, see how I'm doing. Some of them were coming out, joining me on some of the rides as well, or meet them for coffee, or we'd have little coffee stops. So that was really important, because, when you're doing endurance cycling, you're on your own for a lot of the time. And, you do give up your weekends, you give up your social life, really. So when you're seeing other people out, sort of going out at the weekends and having a great time, and you're kind of questioning your sanity why you're not going out because you're going to bed at, early because you're going to be up early and you're doing back-to-back 200-mile sessions. So it's really good having that support there. And then my brother, he's from the Outer Hebrides as well, from Stornoway. So he came over as well. So he was part of that. He was, like I said, with his van, and he was in the mechanic's van there with everything behind as well. So it was nice having him with us as well, because knowing that, my brother was part of it as well. So it was just, you couldn't do it without them, and I wouldn't want to do it with anyone other than these guys, because, we built up that bond, and just knowing that, trust them 100%.
Yeah, and I was going to say that it must be really important to get to know everybody beforehand, and it's something that we won't have the luxury of. It'd just be the two of us on the road. But yeah, it certainly comes across that you need to, as much as we need to be a really good team on the road, if you're reliant on people, having that kind of background, having worked with them before, I think is really, really key.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of the weather window there, and that must be kind of a huge deal, because we spoke to Richard Thoddy very early on in the podcast, and he suffered some awful weather going over Shap on his attempt on a penny farthing. But I mean, you must have needed to have almost kind of perfect weather, as much as UK weather is ever perfect, to have a good chance at breaking this attempt. So how much flexibility did you have? Did you have weeks? Was it days? Or was it the case of, you might just have to go for it?
No, it was really just 10 days, because, we all work full time.
Yeah.
We all sort of have that time that we can only take off work. And at the same time, it was probably easier this time, the fact that no one was going away on holidays anyway. So we're kind of stuck in Scotland or England. So we literally had from the 25th of July till, I think it was like the 4th, 5th of August was when, the start and the last day that we could go. So that time, or the lead up to it, was just horrendous, because you're looking at the weather, you're looking at every website, you're looking at every app, trying to get, the best conditions to look at to see for the rain, the wind, and putting everything together. And it was the time there, it was just a couple of weeks after we had that really warm spell. And the weather the forecast just seemed to be all over the place. But bearing in mind that we obviously had to give 48 hours notice to the RRA, but it would take us 3 days to get down there anyway, because or 3 days to plan to go down, because we were staying the first night halfway Gloucester, and then the second night, so we weren't travelling all down together in one go. So the 25th, it was like a complete northerly wind. So that was a complete write-off. And then it was looking like the next day was the same. And then I'm looking ahead and I'm like, oh no, it looks like all northerlies. And then it was lots of rain. So like, you're looking at the weather and you think, oh, you just want to cry, because it just looks so bad. And you think you're never going to get an opportunity. And then you're like, well, do I take it now? Do I not take it? So unfortunately, it was the 28th that we went, because there was planned the Wednesday or the Thursday looked really quite good. But for that distance, you're never going to get perfect conditions. You're going to get probably good conditions, which we did in England. And then when you come through to Scotland, that's when the elements are going to hit you hard. And that's really what happened. But so we decided on the Sunday that we were going to start on that Wednesday. And I think once the decision had been made, it was probably more of a relief, because you thought, well, there's nothing that you can do now. And if the weather does change, you have to sort of take the confidence that you've done enough training that will get you through, so long as it's not a tail or a headwind the whole way, that you can get by.
Yeah.
So thankfully it did. Well, we had a great tailwind all the way up the A30. So that was really nice for the first 6 hours. And then as a plan, coming into Scotland, or as we had kind of forecasted, but I didn't kind of forecast the headwind that we did get. And it wasn't too bad rain-wise, and there's a lot of crosswinds. But I mean, in general, I can't complain, because, like you said, you'll never get 100% of what you want. So we just kind of had to make do with it. And it wasn't too much rain. It was localized showers. Well, I remember that in Bristol, because it was really, really heavy showers there, but it was really warm and you could see the blue skies, so you knew it was just passing. And then there was no point in stopping to change to put any more clothes on because you were dry quickly as soon as the rain stopped with the heat.
Yes, I think that's pretty good going for UK weather, isn't it? Because even in the summer months, it could have been a complete torrential downpour, and yeah, I'm sure we've had certainly that amount of time where it's just rained solidly in a row in the UK. So yeah, it does sound like you were relatively lucky. And as you mentioned there, like the training leading up to this must have been key, because it's obviously it's not just as simple as riding your bike really, really fast. And as you say, you work full time. So how did you kind of factor in your training around your work? Did you have a very set program? What was your strategy leading up to it?
It was a bit mixed, really, to be honest, because prior to, well, it probably hit the peak at 2020, but then obviously not been able to do it. So at that point there, I was able to do the national 12-hour TT. So at least I kind of was able to put some of my training into good kind of stead for that. And it was a good kind of training day as well. But prior to that, I've been doing lots of gym work, which I probably hadn't done in the past. Lots of threshold, lots of hill work, which for me, that was just completely new and just more enduring and kind of like suffering pain, whereas doing 2-minute hill reps and VO2 max at 30 seconds, that's the stuff that you kind of think that your legs are just burning and your lungs are going to burst. So it was quite interesting it was quite daunting probably the first time looking at my training plan and seeing that was what I was going to be doing and thinking there's no way that I could do it, but your body just adapts to it and you do get used to it. And then between that, probably midweek and then longer rides at the weekend were kind of back-to-back days. And then probably the lead out to it was 6 weeks prior to it. Did a really good session because a couple of weeks before that, I was really doing 200-mile back-to-back days just to kind of build up the fatigue and the resistance. Then we had over 4 days doing 3 200-mile days. So it was like 12-hour days. So it was like back to back to back. So, and it was all, well, the total of these 3 days was 10,000 meters. So it was the same amount of climbing. So it wasn't just like I was doing flat routes, but it was a gateway. It was kind of like plotting around all over Scotland, up around the Highland or around sort of Perthshire, looking at different scenery that I hadn't been to before. So it was really nice. But then I suppose the novelty wore off after like day 2. I was like, oh no, I know which hill's coming, because each route was kind of a slight variation. And like some of these hills were just killers. So it was literally after the first day coming home and then just showering, eating, getting to bed, and then be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, breakfast, and getting ready to go again. Same thing. So it was like eat, sleep, repeat, eat, sleep, train, repeat. And on the third day, I just thought, oh, why am I doing this? I was just completely so fatigued, and my body at that point, even before starting, was probably depleted. So going into that and knowing that this is what I had to do, just this would be the last long one before the kind of like the big one. So I knew that mentally I had to get that done. But the wind was just horrendous. And I remember being in a 20-mile stretch of wind in a headwind. And I just thought, this is never ending. And it was just, there's a loch beside me. I just thought I wanted to just throw my bike in the loch and just get a bus home or something. And then in the final part, I knew that I had two big, or I suppose at one point I thought they were big hills, but now they're just kind of relatively kind of wee digs to go home. And then I thought, well, I could just go home because it started raining at that point. So at that point, it was kind of a mental game. So I'm thinking, well, I'm trying to tell myself if I do that, that's kind of like the equivalent of doing Berriedale and Helmsdale, the last 2 climbs on the way home. Or do I just go home and just kind of like cut it short? But I knew that I just had to do it. So doing that and then just coming home after that, just completely wrecked. I think that was just, it got my body really used to it, and that getting to that stage and then just to be able to recover after that. So it was a complete variation, and it was really good because it just kept me really motivated, because it wasn't the same thing I was doing all the time, different types of sessions, and then like I said, going into the gym as well, building up my core and the strength and conditioning as well, because when you're in that kind of TT position for that length of time, just to make sure that everything's supple.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's not just about your legs when you've got to sit on a bike for that long.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really interesting what you say there. It sounds, that was a lot of work building up your mental endurance as well as your physical endurance. And as I think any long distance cyclist will know, it's very much as much a game of your mind as it is of your physicality too. So yeah, it sounds like you had a really strong plan there, and really good strategy. One thing I noticed that was kind of interesting that a lot of riders, particularly in the ultra endurance events, seem to be like riding to power or heart rate or wattage. I think one of your reports or blog mentioned that you actually rode to speed through this challenge, which is a little bit different. So yeah, just to find out the reasoning behind that and how you found that, and yeah, how that worked out for you.
Yeah, well, knowing that what the record that I had to beat was 52 hours, 45 minutes, so that would give an average of 15.9 miles an hour. So knowing as well that when I stop, the clock doesn't stop. So it was really quite good to sort of try and get a buffering from the start. So at the start there, I was watching my heart rate and my power. So just making sure that my heart rate just stayed in zone 2, that I wasn't overexerting, that I wasn't, yourself, that if you go out too hard early on, you're going to pay for it in the end. So just keeping an eye on my heart rate just to make sure that it still kept low. And with the power as well, I was watching that, but not being sort of caught up with it. Just making sure that when I was going up the hills, that I was just putting it into a low gear and spinning, and not sort of going too high there. But it was great to be able just to keep your average pace, to see that, because after I'd come off for the first stop, probably about 8 hours in, 200 odd miles, I was averaging about 19 miles an hour. So, and my heart rate was 136, 35. So it was kind of going down and my pace was going up. But that was obviously just because I had a really good start with the tailwind, and then the draft of the cars, the cars just going by on the A30. So just with a fast moving car, so it's kind of got the momentum from there. So to be able to create a buffering for that, and knowing that, it didn't matter how slow that I was going, that I just kept moving. So that average pace would just kind of still keep at it. So I just knew that it couldn't drop to 16 miles an hour. So then when I got up to Shap, that's when we had planned that in Penrith we'd have an hour stop, and during that hour I'd sleep for 20 minutes. But as I was going up Shap, I thought, you know what, I'm still averaging about 18 miles an hour at that point. I want to just sort of keep going. If I was going to sleep, it would be a forced sleep, and I didn't feel ready to sleep. So I went in, and the guys were there. I just thought, well, because at that point I said, any decisions that are going to be made after 12 hours, they're going to be made by you guys, because I know that I'm not going to be in any mental state to make my own decisions. So I went in and said, what about this? Just carry on going. And they just went, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, go on, get some food, get some change, and then get out of here. So part of me was like thinking that, I might have to try and convince them, or they would like be convincing me, but it was a case of no, they were happy to go like that. But that was really good after, because I only stopped there for 25 minutes. So it meant that my average pace hadn't dropped down much at all. So I was still averaging about 18 miles an hour at that point. So it gave me that buffering, that if I did want to sleep, that I could, or if I not wanted to sort of stop for any length of time that I could do, not any length of time, but for a short time I could do. So it was just constantly watching that average pace, really, and just making sure that it doesn't drop too much.
Yeah, and it's I've kind of done my own little training rides of like that, where you're kind of watching the clock all the time, and I just can't imagine trying to hold that for that duration. I can just about manage it for a couple of hours, but yeah, it's mind-blowing. And did you have like a target that you wanted to break the record by, or was it anything goes, you just wanted to scrape something off it? Because it was a hard record, wasn't it? So what was there a specific aim?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And my schedule was for 52 and a half hours, so that would have been 15 minutes off it. But fortunate with the way that everything went, I was able to sort of keep above the schedule the whole time. So I think going into it, if you had said, you beat it by 5 minutes, I'd been delighted. And then when I was coming up before Helmsdale, so that was the first of the big climbs, I think at that point it was probably about an hour and a half ahead of schedule. And I was thinking to myself, that can't be right. Well, I knew it was right, but at the same time, I just couldn't believe it, that I'd got that far ahead. And I was just like, felt it was really good. It was a really good feeling to know that I could sort of spin up the hills there and not sort of be pressurized with time wise. And then I thought, what, an hour and a half, I thought, I wonder if I can sort of extend that a wee bit further, if I could sort of reach it. Because, I know that there's other people there that are interested in doing the record as well. And I thought, anyone can come up behind me. So I thought, well, maybe I can just sort of, well, I've got power in my legs as well. I might as well just kind of empty the tank now as I can. So I think just going on past an hour and a half and then realising once I got to the finish, it was an hour and 40 minutes. I mean, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I could have exceeded it by that much. To achieve that, I mean, yeah, to me in itself, I look at the map now and I look at the uploads and I just can't believe that I did that.
Yeah, no, it is truly amazing. And yeah, you have certainly made it a very hard record to beat. So best wishes to anybody that tries. But yeah, I think hopefully it should stand for quite a while. And then we often find on the bigger rides that you especially over that duration of time, you go through kind of various phases and mood swings. Do you have any like really low points where you felt you couldn't go through it, and then did you have any points where you came out the other side and kind of on top of the world, as it were?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was like physically and mentally, it was like a roller coaster. Starting off, you're fresh and you're ahead of schedule and, you feel good. And the first stop there, you're chatting away and it's all really good. And then coming into the likes of Preston there, where it just got really dark and it was grey and it was like through the night and it was just like really miserable. And then you're kind of like questioning yourself and you're thinking, oh, what am I doing? But then, you see someone on the side of the road, they offer you a banana and some jelly beans and you're happy. And, you're kind of like a wee bit of motivation. And then, you've got another kind of spring in your step. So you're off there again. But I think the main kind of the point when coming into Gretna Green, there was that stretch of road all the way up to Abington. And it's just a horrendous stretch of road. It's false flats. It was into a headwind. It was just really dull and really horrible and really sore. And I remember just like looking straight ahead and all I could see was straight ahead. And I couldn't see, when the road was going to end and then turn to the next corner. And it was the same again and again and again. But, I've ridden that road before, so I knew what was ahead of me. But I thought, I just want to put the van or the bike in the back of the van and just like curl up and cry and just like, but then I thought, what, I've worked too hard. There's too many people that have come out. They supported me. I was doing it for Alzheimer's Scotland as well, for a charity. So there's so many people that had already donated. So that was the real thing that just kept me going. And then the guys, the support team at the low points, they would surprise me and hand me up one of Millionaire shortbread. When that was a wee treat when I thought I was going to be getting a wrap or a gel or something. And it was something simple like that that would just like completely perk me up again. And then like on the A9 going into, or before going on to the A9, there was a group of support, mostly from Stirling Bike Club, at the roundabout in Perth. And it was so nice. They were just like cheering me on. Like I felt bad because I couldn't stop and have a wee kind of chat with them. But it was like a really nice send off, knowing that I was heading on up to the A9, where I was going to be for the next 6 hours. So just like thinking back there and then seeing that some of them were going up ahead and then going into the laybys and stopping. So that was a really kind of it was a good sidetrack. And then you're obviously on the A9 in the dead of the night, which is not a nice place to be. And I had no sleep. And then I was okay going up the climbs because I was warm. And then I remember getting cold at one point because coming down the descent and then having to get more clothes to put on. And then having too much clothes on, and then I wanted to take the clothes off. But I probably didn't. I just didn't know what I wanted because, your mind's playing games with you and you're kind of sleep deprived, you're fatigued. But then coming into Inverness at 3 o'clock in the morning to the sound of bagpipes.
Oh, amazing.
My friend's son was playing, the 13 years old playing the bagpipes, and then there's a group of support along there. I'm like, I thought at that point I was hallucinating. I'm thinking, what's going on? I just did not expect them at all. And it's just a complete eye-opener. So to see that was just fantastic. And And then I think just like the support along when I say the final straight, there was probably still 150 miles to go. That was just really motivating. And I think that was just kind of trying to sort of get away from all the pain that my body was in. I couldn't get comfortable. And, it was just a case where we've got this part to do, then that part to do. But it was really just the motivation and then support team they were so encouraging towards the end there as well. And just making sure as well, safety-wise, that it was okay, that it was compass mentis, that I was riding my bike straight and getting a couple of beeps and that, in case they thought that was not enough.
Yeah. Oh wow, it sounds like you had amazing support all the way up there, and yeah, I'm pretty sure they appreciated why you couldn't stop and say hi. And yeah, I think that must have really made it. And as you say, yeah, it's sometimes the small motivations that keep you going. And for me, as well as you, it sounds food can be a massive part of that. Did you have a specific nutrition strategy, or was it just whatever you felt like? I mean, yeah, 52 hours is kind of long enough that you need to be sensible to some extent, but as well, yeah, it's those millionaire shortbreads that can really turn you around sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, because I knew that, that's what kind of discovered me before, because I was having sort of reflux problems and, with the digestion. So throughout all the training rides, that's what I had just really sort of tried and tested everything to see what worked. So it was just Mountain Pools, that product there, that the flapjacks and the gels and the energy drinks. So I was getting hand-ups every hour. So it was a combination of, I'd get a bottle, and on the bottle there'd be an elastic tied round with it, would either have a wrap, which was basically just cheese and ham, but it was the best cheese and ham wrap ever. It was just really good, really savoury. But then the next time I could have the flapjack, which that was probably a wee bit sweeter. And then the gel, which was just functional. That was just, it had everything that I needed in there. And then just mixing up the flavours of the drinks as well to make sure that I wasn't drinking the same kind of flavour each time. So the team, like little things like that. So, on the first hand up, it might be orange, then the next would be blackcurrant, then tropical. By the end of it, I didn't know what I was drinking. I was just like, whatever they were giving me, I was taking. And then that was another wee game that I was playing in my head, thinking, right, what am I going to get next? Or are they going to surprise me and things like that. So thankfully, that worked like a treat. I didn't have any problems. I was able to digest it because, your body's not used to, or it shouldn't be on a bike for that length of time, and especially eating. So it's hard to get the right foods that you can break down, that you've still got enough calories, that you get in the intake that you need for the expenditure and that as well. And then, like I said, there, the odd millionaire shortbread that was thrown in as well. So it was probably all quite stapled, really. It wasn't anything kind of fancy, anything exciting, but it just kind of got me through it, really.
Yeah, and it certainly sounds like it worked well for you. And yeah, sometimes you've just got to go with what you want. And yeah, the mix of sweet and savoury, I think, is a big thing. I've certainly sweetened myself out on rides before, and I'm just need something with a bit more salt. So I can completely appreciate that. And then obviously this is a massive achievement, but have you got any plans for anything else, or are you going to kind of settle down and do a bit more 24-hour TTs, or what's next?
Well, that's the thing, because it's really kind of like 2-3 years in the planning and the making. So I remember coming back home afterwards thinking, right, that's it, and you're kind of in that kind of like lull. You're kind of like, what do you do now? And because obviously you need time for your body to recover and kind of get back to yourself, but at the same time you want to get back on your bike, and even just if it's just cafe rides, and then you can think, well, do I do something else? Because I feel that I've still got my fitness, I'm healthy, so that I should probably do something else. So what a lot of people do after the Land's End to John O'Groats is that they would continue to do 1,000 miles. So they would, that's what Lynne did. So she finished at John O'Groats, and then she went up and did another 161 miles to bring it up to 1,000 miles. But I think logistically that would be a bit of a headache for us again to go all the way back down to do that. So I had been looking into that, but then there's different routes that you can do. You can plan your own routes. So we're thinking we could do that in Scotland, maybe for August. But prior to that, there's another record, the North Coast 500.
Oh yes, of course.
Which,
It's kind of more on your doorstep, isn't it?
Yep, it's on my doorstep, and I did a wee recce of part of it there a couple of months or a month or so ago, just to see, the steepest part. So over that 500 miles, it's the same amount of elevation as Land's End to John O'Groats. It's the 10,000 meters, because it's just up, down, up, down, up, down. So yeah, I'd like to give that a go, say early May. So that would be Guinness World Records and the Road Records Association as well. Now that's part of one of their records. And then maybe look to do the 1,000-mile record in August, hopefully in Scotland.
Oh wow, well that sounds massively exciting. And yeah, certainly if you do the NC 500 in May, yeah, we'll still be around, so we'll be avidly watching that, certainly.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. They're not off till the beginning of June, so yeah, I'll definitely be watching out for that one. And then would you ever go slower? Do you think you'd ever be tempted to tour Land's End John O'Groats, or do you ever go out on a bike ride and just kind of mill around a bit?
It's funny that, because a lot of people have asked would I do it leisurely, and I don't think, no, I wouldn't, because I think I just like, if I'm going to do something like that, I like to get on my bike and do it without the whole kind of with the luggage and the starting and stopping. I like to get it all done and then enjoy yourself afterwards. Like we got to John O'Groats there, and then that's when we had our prosecco and our pizza, and we had our fun then, but it was kind of getting it done at that point. But I love after that, it was great going round Stirling, round my area here, just having coffee rides and just getting on your bike for fun, and not worrying about your heart rate, not worrying about your power, just on these kind of days like that. But I think that it's really important to do that. Although I do enjoy the training, I do enjoy the sessions that I do get, but at the same time it's nice just to go out for fun and just enjoy it, because there are going to be days there that it is hard, and especially over the winter. You're going out there, and like on Sunday there, it was started off at 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, and then it was, by the time I was finished, it was back to 0 degrees. So you put the work in like that, for a reason, and obviously for the love of it as well. But yeah, I do actually enjoy putting on shorts, t-shirts, enjoying the sunshine, and the coffee and cake rides too.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I don't think you can go after these sort of records unless you've really got to love the cycling and seeing the world from the seat of a bicycle. So yeah, I think it's not something you can do without that kind of passion. Just before we finish up, Christina, I have got a little bit of tandem trivia for you, so I hope you don't mind bearing with me.
Yeah.
My first question is, have you ever ridden a tandem?
I haven't, but it has been suggested. There's obviously the male and female tandem record for Land's End to John O'Groats, and that had been suggested by one of my club mates. But I think probably at the time then it fell on deaf ears, but you never know.
Yeah, I think I looked at that as well, going, I wonder what it is, and I looked at it and realised it was very fast, and we don't go quite that fast.
I don't know how you do it though. Just you must have like the coordination and just like the balance and everything just to be in tandem.
I mean, you have to be very trusting of your pilot if you're on the back, shall we say. And yeah, you obviously have to be, a very strong team, and it's the little complications, as you say. You're in the realm of marginal gain, so every time you stop, that's losing time. And if one of you stop and the other doesn't, if one of you gets sleepy and the other doesn't, you can soon become out of sync. And I think that would be one of the big challenges of riding that sort of ride at that sort of pace, would be trying to eliminate all those kind of little stops and little bits that could easily mount up. But yeah, that would
if you've got if you're feeling good, but then your partner's not feeling good, and it's going to be one's up, one's down, So it's trying to get that balance, I think.
Yeah, and you can balance it out sometimes. So sometimes, if you're feeling good, you can bring somebody else up, but if you both bottom out, it's a bit of a disaster. Yeah, equally, sometimes it can be frustrating if you're just feeling a bit quiet and grumpy, and somebody else is in a completely different place. So yeah, that's certainly one of the challenges of riding tandem. But so imagining, you had got a tandem ride set up. Who would you put on your tandem with you? And this could be anybody. It could be from the world of cycling or not. It could be alive or dead. Anybody at all that you would fancy putting on a tandem ride with you?
Oh, that's an interesting one there. I think the first person that came to mind there was Chris Hoy, thinking with these big legs that he could be, he could just power along, and it could be a nice and relaxing one. It could be easy like that. I think actually I was listening to a podcast there recently with Chrissy Wellington, and I really admire her, the way that she came up through triathlon, what she's achieved. And, I just really love her motivation, her spirit towards that. And then obviously leaving the sport to have the children and kind of returning again. I think she would be a really interesting tandem partner.
Yeah, no, that's great. And somebody you need to have a good chat to somebody. So I think,
I think so. I think that could make the 51 hours go pretty quickly.
Yes, definitely. Fantastic. And do you think you'd be on the front or on the back? Are you a bit of a control freak, or do you think you could have your legs up on the back?
Well, if it was Chris Hoy, I'd certainly be on the back.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I can appreciate that. Yeah, sure. And then when we're riding tandem, we rather cheesily say we're joined by the frame. Is there anything potentially not for the lead jog ride, because you must have been very minimalistic, but is there anything you're joined by the frame to when you do ride? Is there any particular bit of kit, particular food stuff, anything like that is your kind of maybe a creature comfort, or maybe it's just kind of a go-to that you wouldn't do without?
Yeah, it's the 12-hour bib shorts. That is a saving grace. Thankfully, I'm blessed that I'm sponsored by Pactimo. So they've got these, they're called 12-hour bib shorts, and they've got the chamois in them, which is obviously for endurance riders, and the difference that makes over that length of time. So it's, it's comfortable, but over 24, 30 hours, nothing probably is comfortable, but it does take that kind of that soreness away. But even if it's only just like an hour ride that you're doing, or if it's like, say, like that 24 hours, these are the ones that you just put on and you just know that there's a comfort in them. So it's something simple like that, really, and just you get on the bike and it's going to be comfortable-ish.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the simple things, and I might have a look at those.
Absolutely, totally recommend them.
Yep. There's always more options for comfort, aren't there?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then last but not least, why should we ride around the world on a tandem bicycle and break the world record?
Why should you?
Yeah.
Why should you not?
That's fair.
No, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to see the world and to see where you're going to be going, and doing it on a bike there that you can see everything. And that's what I found with cycling, is that it takes you to places that you wouldn't normally go to, and if you're driving in a car, you don't observe it. So part of me is quite envious to see that you're going off and to watch it, but I'd be quite happy to watch from behind a laptop or watching at a dot. And just following your progress there, because I think that's just going to be an amazing adventure. As soon as I heard what you were doing, it was just going to be wow. For that length of time, and like seeing a tandem, and there is no getting away from each other. So I think you've kind of got the added challenges as well, what a solo endurance rider would be able to cope with. So I think just having the experience of going through all these different countries as well is just going to be amazing. And even simple things to like finding foods that you like, or finding foods that is going to keep you going, and enough of it. So I think there's going to be plenty ups, plenty downs, and in betweens, and it's it's a massive thing that you're taking on there. And just like I said, I think there's a lot of people that would be quite envious just watching you doing it, but obviously you're wishing you all the best to do it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, no, it's very exciting. And as you say, there's lots of challenges along the way, but I think that's why that makes it all the more exciting. And yeah, we hope that we do have plenty of dot watchers, and hopefully with plenty of photos, videos,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
everything for everybody to.
Yeah, I think that is. It was only actually recently when I was watching Mike doing the Edinburgh to London dot watching. I thought this is too stressful. I prefer to be the dot and the dot watcher. But I think guys are going to be doing a little bit more enjoyable to watch. You
Yeah, a
can
bit
just
of a
see
steadier pace. Yeah, you can check in
right
once a
across the
week and
country. And
see where we are.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to all that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Christina, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what you get up to in the future. And yeah, again, congratulations on your epic record.
Thank you, and likewise. I can't wait to see you guys and your dots.